These are the. I remember His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj often tells the modern technology humbles us in a very, very unique way. Especially when we find ourselves to be most adept and proficient. It humbles in some mysterious ways. We don't know what's happening. So, all glories to Lord Krishna's energies. So we were studying the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in which we have done so far, I think, 4 sections. Would someone recollect the sections?
Renunciation of work or working in devotion.
That was the first section, correct. For Arjuna, work in devotion, that is karma yoga, is better. In fact, it is most suitable than gnana yoga or renunciation. That's the 3rd chapter's first section. Yes. After that, what was there?
Karma Kanda to Karma Yoga.
Karma yoga.
Yes, there was differentiation. In fact, karma kanda is how karma kanda is functions, that was explained, and the difference was explained following it. The difference between karma kanda and karma yoga, that also was explained. Anything more? Anything more?
Prescribed duties without attachment.
Prescribed duties without attachment. Okay. So I have put the sections on the screen here. So at first, after hearing 2nd chapter, Arjuna thought this duvidha, karma or gnana, tell me one. Then Lord told karma yoga is actually harmony of both. In fact, it is both karma and gnana there in the Krishna consciousness. That's why karma yoga is prescribed. And that is better than renunciation, which is gnana yoga, which comes later part. And later there was description about karma kanda in first 10 to 15 and culminating in 16. And later there was description about nishkama karma yoga. Even if you think you are having no material desires and you are not following karma kanda, still Arjuna, for a purpose of setting the example, you should follow karma yoga, do your duties. Then there was description about the sakta and asakta, attached and detached worker, how both of them, each of them think, act, and consider the world as. So that was discussed, and there in that the important section came of how a detached worker, or more suitably we can call it devotee in practicing Krishna consciousness, how he should deal with attached workers or people of this world, most of them who are attached to the results, how one should deal with them. That also came in that. And then there was a little discussion about how the Varnashrama Dharma is actually a progression of Karma Yoga, how it elevates one to higher stages. That was discussed. I think someone's mic is not muted. We could mute. Now, the last section we started last time was about the important obstacle for a person to act in the manner of Nishkama Karma Yoga, that is working without attachment for results. That was lust. So, in fact, Srila Prabhupada many a times mentions about the lust, and more specifically, the desire for enjoyment with opposite sex. And that he especially mentions as the root bondage to the material world. And that distinguishes a person who is acting without attachment for results and a person acting with attachment for results. So there are many places in our Shastras this topic is discussed. Usually people outside also understand that there is an inner force which drives a person against his good interest, which Krishna calls as lust. He answers it as, yes, that force is actually lust. Everyone understands it. The religions, other religions, starting from Abrahamic religions, and even the other, the Vedic, the preliminary religious paths. They acknowledge it, but the description and the method to how the effect, how it actually covers a person, avrita, and what are the methods to elevate from oneself from that foothold, or what holds us back, is discussed very nicely in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Many stories in Srimad Bhagavatam episodes discuss about it. So here Lord Krishna is talking about the nature of lust. He started telling that it is born of the desire mode of passion, and it is there are many qualities which he described. Can someone recollect a few of the qualities of lust? Some Sanskrit words, if you can remember, that would be good.
We discussed Samishta, Paranishta, and Nirapeksha, 3 different types.
Okay. Yeah, that's good recollection, but that is in a different context. That is in the context of working with for the example setting. That is Parinishtita Bhakta.
Prabhuji, the 3 things we discussed. Lust is always covered, never satisfied, and
Yes. Right. So lust covers avrita, and lust is very difficult to satisfy. Dushpurena, and what is the example given? That is fire, analena, like that. So very good qualities captured. Any other quality anyone would like to add or comment before we move on ahead? There are some more. There are some more actually, if you closely observe.
Prabhuji, power of discrimination loses.
Power of discrimination is lost, and that's why lust is called Mahashana. It devours everything. Nothing sacred is left. Everything is devoured. Devour means to engulf. Like that. Yeah, that's very good. And Mahapapma also it is called. Means it's the great. It pushes one to act in any way. Carefree. He becomes literally. He doesn't care for anything to be followed. One who is afflicted by this enemy of lust. That is also true. Yes. So once now in Srimad Bhagavatam it is mentioned that only Lord Narayana is free from the desires of lust. In the section about the section of conversation between Kapila and Devahuti, this word comes, this shloka comes, that only Lord Narayana is actually free from the desires of this enjoyment propensity, because ultimately he is above all this. He is the creator and he is transcendental to all of it. And one who takes his shelter also is fully. One who takes fully his shelter is also transcendental to this lust. He can rise above the lust. So in that sense, it is not natural that a practicing devotee faces this problem repeatedly. One should understand it, acknowledge it, understand its the description, its natures, what are the ways in which it acts, and how one should actually regulate it, how one should rise above it. These are the ways devotees, practicing devotees, we all should actually understand, endeavor for it, and contemplate on it. How much ever we contemplate is short, especially because of our conditioned minds, and especially because the Maya herself covers that true knowledge. So with the great mood of dependency on Lord, we try our sincere endeavors to do this. So here we have seen so far that this lust, the covering of lust is 3, which was explained, the 3 types of covering. One covering is told as example of fire covered by smoke. What was the consciousness explained by that analogy? Fire covered by smoke.
Human consciousness.
Human consciousness. Just as a little smoke which covers the fire and little dealing properly, blowing away properly, then fire could be rekindled easily. So in human life, the divine consciousness, spiritual consciousness can easily be awakened. The covering of lust, that is the smoke, is not much. That's why human life is considered very, very key to rise above lust. Now, second type of covering was
Mirror.
Animal.
animal consciousness. What was the example given?
Mirror.
Dust covered on the mirror.
Mirror which is covered by the dust. Yeah. So sometimes we don't understand, whether it's really mirror after prolonged covering. So it requires some endeavor. Surely animals act by their instincts. So that consciousness is told. And lastly, the last type of covering and what it indicates.
Trees.
Consciousness.
Trees consciousness.
Tree consciousness. What example, Prabhu? What was it given?
Embryo covered.
Embryo covered.
The womb has, the embryo within the womb, the covering of the womb. So it's very difficult to understand. So this coverings was explained how the extent of lust could be. And later it was explained about some qualities of dushpurena, analena. Now from text number 40 onwards, Lord will explain some key things to understand to control lust, to deal with the lust, to rise above the lust. So let us read from there. This is text number.
Prabhuji, when we say Vishnu, right? So which Vishnu we or Narayana which found is the Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshi or Kshidrakshi Vishnu?
All the Vishnu Tattvas, Prabhuji. We can consider all the Vishnu Tattvas in this. They are all about this condition of lust. That's it.
Okay.
You have any specific question on that regard?
No, just we say that, right? Vishnu, Narayan or Krishna is same. Vishnu here. Sometimes we ask Vishnu, right? Say Vishnu or Krishna. So which Vishnu is? There's a three Vishnu, right? So
Yeah.
one is we are referring Mahavishnu or all three.
So Lord Krishna, he expands into numerous expansions. Balaram, Sankarshana, the Chaturvyuhas, and the secondary Chaturvyuha goes into become one of them become Mahavishnu. Then later from Mahavishnu, Garbhodaka and Kshirodaksha Vishnu, from him all the avatars, Vishnu Tattvas come. No Vishnu avatars come in this world. So all of them, Vishnu Tattvas, we can consider all of them are about this condition of lust. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Now we are at the shloka number 40. Indriyani mano buddhir asyadhishtana muchyate etair vimohat yatyesha gnanam avritya dehinam. Who would read today?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes,
Prabhuji,
yes.
can I read?
Yes. Please go ahead, Mataji.
Translation. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him.
Yes. So what is Lord describing from here up till the end is how to conquer lust, how to understand properly where it is and rise above it. One of the key things to know is where is the enemy first. Before dealing with conquering enemy, we should know where is the enemy placed. Now here Lord describes where is this lust placed in the conditioned body. So three places: senses, mind, and intelligence. So usually we clearly understand the first aspect of senses. Yes, when the senses come in touch with sense objects, then there is a desire for enjoyment, craving for enjoyment, and they when they try to do the enjoyment, then that experience binds them to further enjoyment. Now the second thing is mind. What is mind? How mind is the sitting place of lust? It is because mind is nothing but the storage of our previous experiences. It is the samskaras stored here. So whenever earlier time sense and sense objects have come together, and there has been experience, so that experience is there registered in the mind. So next time, even though sense object is not in view, the mind contemplates it, and that's when lust again attacks. Like last time we were telling about it, lust, Visha and Vishaya. So Visha and Vishaya, among them, Vishaya is more powerful in the sense that Vishaya, once it has come in touch with our Indriyas, it leaves an impression And that impression is so strong that next time, even if the Vishaya is not physically present, that impression of the experience, it is sufficient to delude a person. That contemplation about the sense objects can take a person away from his determination. So this is how the mind also could be a place of lust. Next one is intelligence. When the intelligence, how do we understand here? Prabhupada says here, very interesting. He analyzes. I will go to read that little later. But when the intelligence has become affected by lust, then every plan it does is with that desire for lust. Sometimes it's very hard to understand. Even we could justify it, though it is for the purpose of lust. The intelligence could justify it very nicely in a very good Krishna conscious way also sometimes, that it is necessary, it is something which is very important, it is something which is being practical, many things like that. So intelligence which is affected by lust can also affect conditioned soul, further bondage. So these three are the sitting places of lust, and these are very difficult to control. And Lord will suggest, based on this sitting place, a very nice solution later. So that's why this is very important to understand. We will take to purport and then I will take to the question. Okay, we'll just go to the purport and we'll read the few important lines. Prabhupada says, the enemy has captured different strategic positions in the body. Therefore, Lord is giving hints of those places, so that one who wants to conquer the enemy may know where he can be found. So then Prabhupada tells description about mind, mind being the leader of the senses, the center of all activities. It actually directs the senses to act. And intelligence is actually the one who reasons for the mind to act. So intelligence is above mind, but if intelligence is also affected by lust, then there is no much difference between acting with intelligence or acting with mind. So Prabhupada tells, intelligence department becomes the capital of such lustful propensities. Mind and senses one can surely understand, but if intelligence becomes, then it is next door neighbor to the soul. Then what is left for soul to take shelter of? So lusty intelligence influences the spirit soul to acquire false ego, identify with matter, and thus with mind and senses. So there is some very important shloka of Bhagavatam just quoted by Prabhupada, which says the different types of intelligence, conditioned intelligence. First intelligence is to consider that the body as oneself, Atma Buddhi. Second intelligence is to consider the people belonging to the body as one's own, Swadhi. And next is another is to go by the external formularies of religion and consider that as the part or essence of religion. Like suppose sometimes one goes to a holy place and does the external formulary of taking bath, but he doesn't go to hear the transcendental knowledge from some great souls who live in that holy place. So one goes by the externals of the religion or religious paths. That is Tirtha Buddhi. And lastly, so there are three. There is one more, Ijyadhi, Bhauma Ijyadhi, to consider one's place of birth as very worshipable. Anything which is related to the body as worshipable. So that's how the mind, or sorry, the intelligence, one can see the flavors of intelligence which is affected by lust. And Prabhupada tells it very aptly, how intelligence could be the sitting place of lust. Yeah. So in this shloka, basically, we have seen the three sitting places of lust and how they cover the knowledge of the jiva. Yeah. Any question?
Yes, Prabhuji, I have a question. Okay. Generally, like everything is recorded in that memory, and then it is there. But like why we always recollect the bad things happen, or there are so many good things also. We are chanting and we are doing kirtan. So many good things also we are doing. Why mind doesn't retrieve the good things? It's because strongly not impressed. The impression is not created strongly because of that reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that needs a deliberate contemplation, and that is possible. It is a matter of training. Prabhupada says. Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness is a matter of training. So when we read Nectar of Devotion, we will see there one example given that how a child, just as a child, easily learns the propensity. It has the propensity to walk, and with little practice, he walks. It is not unnatural for that child. Similarly, to relish Krishna consciousness, to remember and cherish Krishna consciousness is not unnatural for the jiva. It requires practice. So that's what Prabhu Krishna will tell now, and he will also tell much later in Bhagavad Gita that abhyasa is required. We have to act at the level of intelligence, especially when we don't have preeti to the Lord. Buddhi becomes the driver, especially what type of buddhi that will come in this chapter. But buddhi needs to be the driver. And that is a part of sadhana. Sadhana, bhakti, there one has to act by intelligence guided by Guru. And it is possible, Prabhuji. We can see that sometimes even in our contemporary times, how people who are practicing with sincerity practice and they have developed such great desire, natural desire to serve and remember about Lord's pastimes and Krishna consciousness activities like that. So that gives us hope, and that shows actually it will come. What I'm telling will come. Lord himself gives that hope to Arjuna. Hey Arjuna, do not think that this path is something very difficult. Many people have traversed this path and they have got purified. So he's giving us that hope. So with that hope, we should endeavor. Right? So though times it becomes very hopeless situation, struggling with our own, on our own, we should try having that faith on our teachers, our acharyas. That's the key.
Okay, but just now, 2 minutes back, you were saying that the intellect is also getting spoiled. That is bit really
So that
annoying
what
or
type
worrying
of
factor.
how we should use intellect will come. Krishna will tell.
Okay.
The conclusion of this section is to act by intelligence, buddhi. But what type of intelligence, that Krishna will tell.
Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Okay. So now Lord will continue telling. So after knowing the places where lust is sitting, what is the easiest place to start with? That is senses. So one should go at every place where lust is, and one should do something to conquer it. That's how people do in warfare, is it not? So Lord says, go to the senses first. Start with the senses first. That's the key. Tasmat tvam indriyanyadav niyamya bharatarshava papmanam prajahyenam prajahihyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Read.
Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization.
So Lord is telling here in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin by regulating the senses. So do not let it go from dhyana to dhyayato vishayan sangaha, nip it at the bud. Do it at the very beginning. And how you do it at the beginning? Start with senses first. Even if it's difficult to capture mind or intelligence because they are not perceivable, at least you can capture your senses. That is very possible. So Lord is telling here, encouraging the Arjuna as Bharatarshava. You are the chief of the Kula of Bharata king. So you should do it. And what is the nature of this lust? If you don't do it in the very beginning, then it will not only destroy your knowledge, O Arjuna, but it will even destroy your realizations. Jnana and Vijnana Nashanam. So no matter how much a person has made advancement, until one attains prema to the Lord, this enemy of lust has to be dealt properly. Later it will come in the 5th chapter also. Till the time one leaves the body and attains spiritual body, one should be conscious, one should be alert. One cannot become relaxed or negligent. So start with the senses, Krishna is telling here. And Prabhupada quotes a nice Bhagavatam shloka to explain us about Jnana and Vijnana. So here, I refer to the last paragraph here. Lust is only the perverted reflection of the love of God, which is natural for every living entity. But if one is educated in Krishna consciousness from the very beginning, Prabhuji, here is some key. That natural love of God cannot deteriorate into lust. It requires some training. It requires proper education. And later Prabhupada says, when love of God deteriorates into lust, it is very difficult to return to the normal condition. Nonetheless, Krishna consciousness is so powerful that even a late beginner, please see, can become a lover of God by following the regulative principles of devotional service. So from any stage of life or from the time of understanding its urgency, one can begin regulating the senses in Krishna consciousness, in devotional service, and turn the lust into love. So Prabhupada is giving a great key here. No matter by when we understand Krishna consciousness, and still one should take with a sense of urgency and act properly according to the directions given by Guru and Acharyas. Even a late beginner can become a lover of God. So that's interesting. So now Lord will tell, okay, you are now dealing at the Indriyas. It's not supposed. Okay, we are dealing at the level of Indriyas, but there is something more. Lust is far deeper. It's at the mind and intelligence. So what should we do, O Krishna? So for that, Lord will tell how to do. Indriyani paranyahur indriyebhya paramana. Hare Krishna, sorry. Indriyani paranyahur indriyebhya paramana manasastu para buddhya yo buddhe paratastu saha. Yes. Please read.
The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence.
So Lord is telling, do not identify yourself with the senses or the mind or the intelligence. Actually, you are above them, O Arjuna. You are that soul. You are higher than that intelligence also. So Lord is actually giving here a hierarchy of understanding. So I will share that slide here. Are you all able to see this slide? Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes,
Very
Prabhu.
able to see.
Hare Krishna, am I audible?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Sorry, I was disturbed here. We were discussing about this hierarchy, which Lord is telling. So there is sense objects, the Vishaya Vastu, which are the objects actually of enjoyment for senses. And above them is Indriyas. Indriyani Parani Ahu. Indriya is above them. And then above that is Indriyebhya Param Manaha, mind. And above that is Manasastu Para Buddhi, that is intelligence. And Yo Buddhe Paratastu Saha. So he is referring to the soul as higher even than that intelligence. So Prabhupada says in the purport, very interesting. The senses, what are the senses? The senses are nothing but outlets for activities. So if the senses are afflicted with lust, then they become outlets of activities for lust. So lust is reserved within the body, but it is given vent through the senses. So first step which Lord has already advised is regulate the senses. That's the key. Now, little ahead, Prabhupada says about even addressing the level of mind. So since the mind is active, then even though the body may be silent and at rest, the mind will act as it does during dreaming. So, but above the mind is the determination of intelligence, and above the intelligence is the soul proper. So what one has to do, if one engages the very self, that is soul, in Krishna consciousness, from there it should also start. Surely we are doing at the level of senses, which is very practical, and also at the same time we should understand at the level of soul and engage the soul in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada will tell here, so for mind, there should be proper engagement. So mind should be directly engaged in the service of Krishna. It should have something to relish in Krishna and like to do some activities in Krishna. That is for mind. And for intelligence, Prabhupada says, with intelligence, one has to seek out the constitutional position of soul. One should always be in the vichara, vimarsha of, okay, now I am soul, I should act in the spiritual platform, I should act in Krishna consciousness. This should be the contemplation, how I can continue to act consistently, how I can act to please Krishna. So the intelligence should be engaged in this. And the soul, Prabhupada little below says, the soul is the master of intelligence and mind and the senses also. So it should be strengthened with association of Krishna. So soul should be strengthened with the association of Krishna. Intelligence should seek out the constitutional position of soul. Mind should be engaged in Krishna, means it should have something to relish, and continue to be engaged in service of Krishna. And senses should be regulated. So Lord is telling with this shloka, what he means is engage all these levels of covering and your very self. That is a wholesome solution which Lord is suggesting. And in the next shloka, he tells, okay, now how do we do it a little more practically is intelligence. And that intelligence, what type of intelligence that he is describing. So let us read that last shloka in this chapter. Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam prasadam. Read.
Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust.
So, Prabhupada is mentioning here spiritual intelligence. Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyatmanam atmana. So engage your mind and what is here mentioned, knowing oneself to be transcendental to sense, mind and intelligence. Steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence. Atmanam atmana. But with what? Knowing this, evam buddhe param buddhva. So what Lord is telling here is essentially fix your intelligence on the param. That is spiritual intelligence. Now, how do we do that in this stage of conditioned state? It is necessarily based on our guru, or words of, or the actions or the instructions of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So the intelligence which is guided by Guru, Sadhu, Shastra can only uplift one from lust in this level of sadhana. And that intelligence should direct the mind, it should direct the senses. It cannot be directly the mind, because mind goes by what it likes and what it dislikes. So it likes to enjoy and it dislikes the regulations of Krishna consciousness. So one cannot surely go by mind being the prime mover. So one should actually rest on the spiritual intelligence. One's own intelligence, it's very difficult. It's not very reliable. Sometimes our intelligence is relishing Krishna consciousness, and with equal justification it can say about sense enjoyment also. So one should not give much, one should not trust one's intelligence much, because that is also a sitting place of lust, as Prabhu had pointed it earlier. So the intelligence has to be guided by Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. Sometimes it's very difficult to understand by our intelligence, but nonetheless, knowing that those instructions are the Padma Vakya, Guru Mukha Padma Vakya. They are above this conditioning of material nature, above this lust and everything. I should just follow it. Arana kori ho mane asha. So with that intensity, one should take to the instructions of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, and that should be the guiding light in the life of a sadhaka, practicing devotee. So Prabhupada says, this third chapter of Bhagavad Gita is conclusively directive to Krishna consciousness. By knowing oneself as the eternal servant of Supreme Lord. So he explains about the desire for overlording and sense gratification is the greatest enemy for conditioned soul. But by strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control these enemies. Little below, Prabhupada will say the conclusion. Earlier we had seen this, the last purport of every chapter. Prabhupada gives the summary of the whole chapter. So it's important to read them. Mataji, can you read from here? One may not give up work.
Sure, Prabhuji.
So
One
as we
may
are
not-
reading this, you can all recollect those sections which Prabhupada is going through. Yes, one may not.
One may not give up work and prescribed duties all of a sudden, but by gradually developing Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind, by steady intelligence directed toward one's pure identity. This is the sum total of this chapter. In the immature stages of material existence, philosophical speculations and artificial attempts to control the senses by the so-called practice of yogic postures can never help a man toward spiritual life. He must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence.
So Prabhupada has given the summary. What third chapter is telling? It is actually telling, do not give up work artificially. Develop Krishna consciousness. Situate yourself in the transcendental position. Do not be affected by this enemy of lust. In conclusion, in summary. Yeah. So this completes the third chapter. We completed the 5 sections of the third chapter. I will just show that sections again, so that we, okay, 6 sections. So karma yoga is better than jnana yoga, because the jiva's very nature is to act. If one doesn't act properly, then he will end up becoming a mithyachari. And there was one more reason. So like this, there were reasons why Karma Yoga is better than Jnana Yoga. Then later there was description about Karma Kanda, the description of how yajnas were given in the beginning of creation by Lord himself. There was the cycle of food, Anna, the cycle of sacrifice actually. Anna, Bhavanti, Bhutani, all that we saw. Later, Lord told, okay, even if you don't have desires materially, then still act as a setting example, for setting of example. Then there was description about how Karma Yoga is superior to Karma Kanda, how it elevates, and dealing with the enemy of lust, which comes in the way of proper practice of Karma Yoga, like that. So this completes the third chapter in that sense. So now I was thinking to start fourth chapter today. Any of you have any questions or comments before we go to it?
Okay. So lust means like anything which is not related to Krishna, any kind of desire. Okay, that comes under lust only.
So Chaitanya Charitamrita describes that anything that pleases Krishna is actually prema.
Prema.
And anything that pleases other than Krishna or oneself, Atmendriya Priti Cha Dhare, no, that's called Kama. Krishnendriya Priti Vancha Dhare Prema Nama. That's called prema. So that's how Chaitanya Charitamrita defines it. Yeah. Okay. So, yes, Santosh.
Please forgive me if my question is a little silly, but here in most of the cases I see soul is referred to as he as male. So is there any particular reason for that?
It had come in one of the shlokas earlier. I had mentioned it. It's a generic convention. Prabhupada uses. That's the convention of British English. He. There are many places like that. Man, it's told as I forget some of the biblical usages also. So Prabhupada draws from that English and he presents it like that. It's nothing like gender specific or something. Yeah. So the lust is equally applicable for both men and women. It's because everyone thinks oneself enjoyer as Purusha Bhava. So lust is equally an enemy for both. So the external body may be looking as a man or a woman, but the enjoyment propensity is there for all conditioned souls. So in that sense, lust is an enemy for all, especially conditioned souls in that matter. Thank you. Yeah. Any other comment or question?
Yeah, Prabhuji, this is Sunil. So you mentioned about, like, in the last chapter, it is talking about or the diagram that you showed, right? Soul, intelligence, mind, and senses. So how do we really practically understand and bring to this consciousness that we are soul and we are connecting ourselves to Krishna from a soul standpoint? Right? So how do we, because otherwise it is all me and my body and my intelligence, or say my mind and my senses, like that's how we are getting engaged. So how do we really engage ourselves from soul standpoint?
Correct. So in that diagram, in that purport Prabhupada mentioned, the engagements for each of those levels. So at the level of senses, surely we regulate and we engage it in the service of Krishna, physical working senses way. And at the level of mind, the mind needs some taste. That's why higher taste is usually told. So param drishtva nivartade, that word Prabhupada uses. What does it mean? We have to engage mind. We have to engage in Krishna consciousness with the mind. So wherever mind finds its relish in Krishna consciousness, we should give that very much. And whenever we practice Krishna consciousness, engage with the mind. So we say chant involving the mind, try to hear attentively, hear the katha. So these are all involving our mind in the activities of Krishna consciousness. And wherever mind finds relish in Krishna consciousness, we should give that often. And there will be many aspects for everyone. Different it will be for different one, different devotees. So now that is for mind. Now for intelligence, Prabhupada told, seek out the position of soul. So the Shastras are telling it. How the position of spirit soul is, what is its position, how it is different from this matter. So the buddhi should be engaged in that vichara, tattva vichara, which will come actually in the next shloka. Next chapter is about that only, how to engage the buddhi in tattvataha, to understand about supreme spirituality or Krishna consciousness in truth, with the tattva. So that is the engagement for buddhi. And for the soul, when we engage all these three in Krishna consciousness, the association of Krishna, the soul is actually getting. So Prabhupada also mentions that give the soul association of Krishna and strengthen it by that. So when we chant, when we engage in direct activities of Krishna consciousness, we are giving association of Supreme Lord to the soul. So this way we can see this engagements. So all should be done, not only one is enough. So that's what Prabhupada mentioned also. So but begin with senses. That's the beginning point.
So I just as a follow-up question, so when I read in Bhagavatam 1.2.8, it actually talks about that our soul is entangled in this material world, and it wants to get out of this material world, right? And we are entangling ourselves because of our own material desires, or say anything that is there, and the soul really wants to get out of it, and that's its natural position. So when I read this, so at that point of time, and I want to ask, is this the right way? So I in few days, I actually started to, when I chant, I started to look at that, okay, I am chanting, basically connecting my soul to Krishna, right? And that's how in that consciousness, or say with that mood, I started to, rather than me chanting. Okay, so I am helping my soul, or say my to connect to Krishna. Okay, in that mood. So I wanted to ask you, is this is this the right thing? Or
okay. So dealing it as a third person. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. To begin with, we can consider like that. Yes, I, my very self as a soul, I'm getting association of Krishna. I should engage in Krishna. Or even if we consider the soul as a third person. But actually, whatever, sometimes we identify with mind, or, let me act with the intelligence now here. So we identify with the intelligence, or whatever. The final thing is to engage. So let us focus on that engagement, and these identifications, which are now we are trying to understand this by our intelligence. So it's all very complex, matter, especially in a conditioned state. But the focus is engage at different levels of our existence. So even if one consider, senses for a person, at least senses are very perceivable. Some senses are very easy to start. So engage with the senses, engage the mind, engage the intelligence. Okay, soul, engage it. So slowly that engagement in Krishna consciousness will give that knowledge. We say, in Shikshashtakam, what's that first sloka only? It gives what is that? She is the bride. No. Cheto darpanam arjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam shreyah kairava vidyavadhu jivanam. Vidyavadhu jivanam means it actually, just by chanting Hare Krishna, that knowledge will dawn. But the engagement is important. So by regularly associating with the direct Krishna activities, chanting, service to the deities, reading Bhagavatam, opening it and trying to read, even if our intelligence is not able to clearly make sense of it, but yes, let me understand it as a form of Krishna and give that engagement, then Vidya will dawn. Then naturally Gnana, Vairagya, all that will dawn. So all this clarity of existence will come in picture. So when we practically, so we may understand theoretically, yes, I am soul, but sometimes when we are doing the activities, our identity crisis comes. So should I identify as soul? Should I see it as third person here, there? Engage. That's how I would see it. It's very difficult to see it intellectually. Okay, bro. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So now we are going to the fourth chapter. In the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is called Karma Yoga, Lord described the two types of work very clearly: attached and detached work, Karma Kanda and Karma Yoga. And Karma Yoga here, actually, whenever Lord talks Karma Yoga in Bhagavad Gita, that actually means Nishkama Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga, what differentiates, there was one shloka which we saw, what differentiates a work as attached work and Nishkama Karma or Karma Yoga is actually the desire which is coming out of knowledge. So Lord told that this knowledge is very important. Knowledge purifies, it elevates. We saw in Karma Yoga how it elevates, that we saw. And then it fixes a person in duty. It in fact is the key help for a conditioned soul in his struggle against lust. That's the last section also we saw. So buddhi or gnana is very important. And now Arjuna naturally wants to know about that gnana. So Lord Krishna, he naturally speaks about that gnana, even though Arjuna has not asked any question. So now Lord will describe the nature of that knowledge which helps the jiva to detach oneself from the reactions, detach oneself from the results and rise above the lust. So what is this knowledge? So more description about that knowledge is told in the fourth chapter. The fourth chapter is called Divya Gnana Yoga. Prabhupada tells it as Transcendental Knowledge. So let us go to it. The fourth chapter. I would also like to show the breakup sections. You might have seen them in your workbooks. So it has primarily 5. So in the Transcendental Knowledge chapter, we see the very first, the goal of that transcendental knowledge is Krishna. So let's understand about Krishna. So transcendental knowledge about Krishna. So that's the first section which we are seeing, and later the further sections will come. So now we will go to the first shloka of the fourth chapter. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavanaham Avyayam Vivasvan Manave Praga Manurikshvakave Praveet. Read please.
The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivasvan, and Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, and Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku.
Ikshvaku. So this gnana, the gnana of karma yoga, the science of yoga, I had told this, O Arjuna, long back to Vivasvan, sun god, and that came in the lineage. That came in the parampara. So Vivasvan told it to his son, Vaivasvata Manu. Then he told it to in the lineage of Ikshvaku, which is a sun dynasty. So Bhagavatam describes about these dynasties in the 9th canto, sun and the moon dynasty. So Prabhupada tells in the purport, the history of Bhagavad Gita is told here. So once Srila Prabhupada was in an interview, very famous interview in a television. You might have seen that video also. A person is asking Prabhupada about the authenticity of Krishna consciousness. How, so Swamiji, how old is this process? How old is this movement? So Prabhupada says, actually we instituted this organization in 1965, but actually it goes back at least 5,000 years ago. And then he says, actually it is from the beginning of creation. And he gives this description. Lord Krishna, he spoke this knowledge to sun god, and from there it came to the human mankind, and then later Lord Krishna spoke it again. So the authenticity of the tradition is very important to know. So here Lord is telling this knowledge is time immemorial. It has been heard, practiced, and even taken benefit of by many people, and this will give a great hope to the person who is practicing. This is coming in a lineage. So Lord is telling this knowledge to the king of the kings, that will come even in the 9 Rajarshis. So here sun god was the first recipient of the knowledge. Why sun god? Because sun is considered as the king of all the planets. Raja samasta sura murti rashesha teja. Brahma Samhita says, is it not? Yachakshuresha savita sakala grahanam raja samasta sura murti rashesha teja. So he is the king of all the planets, and the sun god Vivaswan, he is actually the prime person in this universe. So he is given this knowledge. Why he is given this knowledge? Prabhupada tells the kingly class of people are to be knowing this knowledge. So Prabhupada says, why? The royal order should understand the science of Bhagavad Gita in order to be able to rule the citizens and protect them from material bondage to lust. So they should be knowing this, and their decisions and administration should be based on this. So Prabhupada little below says, human life is meant for cultivation of spiritual knowledge. And executive heads of all states and planets are obliged to impart this lesson to the citizens by education, culture, and devotion. So there are 3 things told here. Did you all notice that very important line, Prabhupada's lines here? The lesson to the citizens should be given by education, by culture, and by devotion. So education, surely there should be clear discussion about these truths from Shastras, from different acharyas. And culture is very important. The education, practice, or expression is culture. If culture is not proper, the education may not be effective. So if the culture is not congenial to the education being received, then that knowledge will not have effect. Say I am receiving the knowledge that I am not this body, I am spirit soul. But I go into the world where everyone thinks he is body, and the whole civilization, atmosphere, all standard of living is everything that I am this body. Then it's very hard to get remembered, reminded, and realize that I am not this body, I am spirit soul. So culture is very, very important. And then next comes devotion, which is the essence of culture, which is the goal of culture, devotion. So the executive heads of the state, knowing this knowledge, should impart it to the citizens with the 3 words. Can someone recollect, please, quickly? Very key words. This is famous line. So what are the 3 ways by which citizens are given this knowledge?
Education, culture, and devotion.
Education, culture, and devotion. And little below, Prabhupada will also say that why Vivaswan was chosen as the recipient. I already discussed that he is the king of all the planets, so he is given this knowledge. And it also says that this means to say that this is not something which was talked to someone, Tom, Dick, and Harry on the road, and this is some good piece of knowledge. No, it is not a speculative treatise. Prabhupada uses the word. It's not a speculative treatise. It's not coming just off the hand by someone's fertile brain. And it's not told to someone insignificant. It is a standard book of knowledge coming from time immemorial. So Prabhupada tells it. And he also quotes Mahabharata for this fact. He quotes from there. Interestingly, Prabhupada calculates the timelines. He goes on to quite much mathematics, and he calculates the timelines of when was Bhagavad Gita spoken. first, and then when it came to mankind or humanity. So he goes to this calculation telling how much is one yuga, especially Kali Yuga, Dwapara, and Treta. And okay, if Manu received this in the beginning of Treta Yuga, that means how much time must have elapsed from now? It is approximately 2 million years ago. Because in the beginning of Treta Yuga or at the end of Satya Yuga, Manu received this knowledge. Manu imparted it to Ikshvaku, that is humanity. So humanity starts from Manu. From Manu comes Manukula, Manavas, all that. Progeny comes from there. So 2 million years ago. Now, if we go back little before, Manu received it from, Vivaswan. So when it must have happened? Now, Prabhupada goes to calculate how much is the duration of one Manu, that is 71 Divya Yugas, and when has this description happened? So there is 28 Divya Yugas. In that, this one Manu who is now ruling, actually he is 7th Manu. So 7th Manu is 28 Divya Yuga where we are living and where Lord Krishna has personally appeared. So Prabhupada goes on to calculate the life of Manu and how much Manu's time has elapsed and when he must have received it from Sun God. So approximately 120 million years ago, Bhagavad Gita knowledge was given in this, if you consider this Manu's cycle. And approximately 2 million years ago, this knowledge came to human existence. So Manu's from Manu came Ikshvaku. Ikshvaku means the Sun dynasty where Ramachandra comes. And later it was respoken by Lord when in his timely incarnations, periodic incarnations to Arjuna. So Prabhupada explained that. These numbers are good to know. They are also good questions for your course. So you may keep it in mind. And also it's good, it establishes authenticity. So as we saw, Prabhupada takes a strain to put these numbers in the purports. So it's important to know them. So now here, the Lord will tell naturally, Evam parampara praptam, imam rajarshayo vidu, sakale neha mahata, yogo nashta parantapa. Yes.
This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost.
So it's important to understand the nature of material world. It's very difficult to sustain. Sustenance is a very difficult thing in material world. Things don't sustain over a period of time, even to the matter of spiritual lineages. So Lord here himself is telling, in course of time, this knowledge succession was broken. Sakale neha mahata yogo nashta parantapa. So knowing this, Lord, he knows the material world's nature is like this. So he periodically comes and gives this knowledge. Just see. So Lord takes this, time and effort to come and give this knowledge periodically. He could have told, okay, I gave it. It was the fault of, these fallible conditioned souls who did not retain the, this knowledge, transcendental knowledge. No, Lord repeatedly comes and he sends his great devotees to continue this lineage. So we should know that legacies are very important. Whatever we do in Krishna consciousness, say some services we are doing, something we are doing, we should create legacies. And as much as possible, continue the tradition. So, and do not be surprised if something, what do you say, falls apart. From our side, we should be honest carriers of parampara. So we should make that effort in our words, how much our acharyas have spoken. Let me understand the mood of our parampara, the teachings of our parampara, and be a very good representative of our parampara. So Prabhupada is telling in the purport that as soon as the original purpose was scattered by the motives of unscrupulous commentators, there arose the need to re-establish the disciplic succession. 5,000 years ago, it was detected by Lord himself, and therefore he declared that the purpose of Gita was lost. So in the same way, even today, Prabhupada says so many so-called commentators, they comment on Bhagavad Gita in their own motives actually. But one should not make business on the words of Krishna. That kind of spirit is demoniac. That is to enjoy the property of the Lord without acknowledging and without following the purpose of Lord. So one should not do that. That's simply a waste of time. Lord says this. So now Lord will tell, okay, that time sun god was the recipient. Do you know, Arjuna, why you are the recipient? I will tell you here. Sa evayam maya tedya yoga prokta puratana bhakto sime sakha cheti rahasyam hi etaduttamam. Yes.
That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science.
You are my devotee and my friend, O Arjuna, Bhakta and Sakha. That's why I have chosen you as the recipient of this mystery. Mystery or secrets are told to someone who are very intimate and trustworthy. So here Lord has chosen Arjuna as that recipient. So Arjuna feels little shy. Oh, Lord is telling about me. So now Arjuna wants to, in return, glorify Krishna. So he will inquire a question. He will put a question which will force Krishna to tell about himself. So let us see it ahead.
Hare Krishna, one question, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, so even the Yudhishthira and the Bhima are also friends and devotees. They never said they're not devotees. Why only Arjuna, Prabhuji?
Okay, yeah, good. So they are considered here Sakha word is used, Prabhu. Sakha word is for Sakhya Rasa, and Arjuna is in Sakhya Rasa. And there are many special interactions and dealings, qualities, or we can see exchanges between Krishna and Arjuna. So when he sees Bhima or Yudhishthira, Lord goes even to touch their feet. With Nakula and Sahadeva, he treats them as juniors and gives them blessings. And this is described in Bhagavatam. But with Arjuna, he always embraces. He treats him as his friend. There are occasions where Lord went to Hastinapur and he went on some rides with Arjuna. You may remember in Krishna book, he went on a ride at some rivers, and Arjuna went and saw that there was Krishna saw there is a woman there. Go and ask who is it, And then Arjuna went and asked, "Who are you?" Actually, I am, Kalindi. I am daughter of Varuna. My father has built a palace here. I am worshipping Vishnu. I want him as a. Oh, okay. Here is Vishnu. Actually, Krishna is here. So like this, there are many interactions which are very friendly and very intimate. So Arjuna is very special among them. That's why even Lord will tell later, among the Pandavas, I am
Arjuna.
So Lord finds him there is a special relation of Lord with Arjuna. We can see that objectively.
Also, there was another reason people say, Prabhuji.
Yes.
If you want, I can share. It's like somebody has asked Krishna as well. Okay, why Arjuna is really so close to you? So that time, it seems like Krishna has taken, I think, Pandavas only to the heart or to mouth of the Arjuna when he's in a deep sleep, and he keep on saying Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. So it's not just in daytime he's saying Krishna. Even in a deep conscious, Yes, he always wants Krishna association. This is another reason I read it somewhere. I think some Acharya said.
Yeah. Correct. All
And
the
then he
Pandavas are
just
pure
shown that
devotees.
as an example. That is the reason. Okay, I am his friend. Okay. No other choice for me actually. That is how the Krishna explains.
Many like that. That pastime we know Arjuna chooses Krishna over Krishna's army.
And
Arjuna
also there is another reason as well, Prabhuji. Okay, the last reason, okay, which I have read it somewhere, is like, see, after the entire war completes, Dharmaraj, Yudhishthira don't want to he don't want to become king. Okay, he said like, I don't want to become king, and whatever reason, whatever happens, because there's a lot of killing happened, all the relatives and all that. But Dharmaraj Yudhishthira realized after the war, but Arjuna realized before the war, and then he got the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. So the reason for that is, even when compared to Yudhishthira, Arjuna is much a favor to, because he's much in advance. He's realizing and asking the questions, not the postmortem. Yeah, that is another reason Acharya has given among the Pandavas why Arjuna only. I don't know if these are real answers, but somewhere I read. If it is wrong, maybe you can correct.
No, it's fine. Another just a twist in this whole thing is, if you go to Madhvacharya's descriptions, he will tell Bhima is the supreme among the Pandavas, and he establishes him as the great devotee and the hero of Mahabharata. So the point is, all are pure devotees, and there are special rasas among them. So acharyas, they expound that rasa so that we understand it and we appreciate in that manner. So here Arjuna is the recipient because he's Sakha. In that sense, we can appreciate this fact. Okay, can we continue? Text number 4. Arjuna is putting a question to Lord. Other devotee can read from here, translation. Who would like to?
Can I?
Okay, Mataji. Yes. Arjuna uvacha aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvata kathame tadvijaniyam tvamadau proktavan iti. Yes.
Arjuna said, the sun god Vivasvan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him?
So as we saw earlier, I just heard about it, that Krishna glorified Arjuna, you are Bhakta and Sakha. Now Arjuna wants to give back. He wants to glorify Krishna, and Krishna will be forced to speak about himself from here. So Arjuna is asking, it's not that he does not know Lord's position. He knows Lord is supreme, Lord is, he's spiritual. He comes periodically, avatara he takes, and then he gives this knowledge. But he presents a doubt from the conditioned soul's view. What is it? Oh, sun god Vivaswan, they are para. Para means superior by age to you. You are born from Devaki just recently. Just 120 years or whatever number of years have passed. So how am I able to understand this fact that you told this knowledge to him long back? So the shloka in the Sanskrit says, Kathametad vijaniyam. The word exact literally, Prabhupada also makes that here, is how am I able to understand? It's not a question of disbelief. It's a question of, okay, it's truth, but how can I understand it? So our acharyas have glorified the mood of inquiry of Arjuna here. Very apt for sadhakas. When we hear in Shastras some of the wonderful Siddhanta, which sometimes is difficult for our intelligence to appreciate, and how we should present to our gurus and acharyas. So surely not everything will be understood. Surely at our level of practice or realizations, we fall short. So then we should present it honestly. At the same time, we should not show it as this is wrong. Later it will come in this very same chapter, the attitudes which are not favorable while receiving transcendental knowledge. So it will come in the end of this chapter. So the point here is a mood of humility. a mood of service attitude. Yes, this is truth. How can I understand? Not that, how can this be truth? Not like that. So there is a difference between that, the two here. So Arjuna is asking this question, very natural question for a conditioned soul. So Prabhupada explains in the purport, it's not that he's inquiring for himself, but he is inquiring for all those who are in this conditioned world, not able to appreciate it. Arjuna's putting this question before Lord is simply an attempt by the devotee to defy the atheistic attitude. Last line I'm reading, of persons who consider Krishna to be an ordinary human being subject to the modes of material nature. We'll go little more time today, maybe 10-15 minutes, and we'll conclude. So Arjuna put the question here. So now,
Prabhuji, could I put one, Prabhuji, one pastime of Krishna could I put here as an example? I mean, even Brahma and Indra could not recognize Krishna in the pastime as a godhead, right, Prabhuji? So that's why Krishna want to speak to Arjuna again and again his transcendental knowledge.
Okay. Even the devas are not able to understand. Yeah, true. So periodic knowledge dissipation is important. Reminding the parampara is important. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you. So now Lord will answer this question. Hare Krishna. Lord will answer this question here very nicely. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bahuni me vyatitani Janmani Tabacharjuna Tanyaham Veda Sarvani Natvam Vetta Parantapa. Read.
The personality of Godhead said, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of enemy.
Oh Parantapa, you have killed many enemies, but understand the nature, position of myself here. Lord is telling. What is that spiritual position? He says that many births you and I have passed. I have come in many earlier occasions, and you also have come. I remember all of them, but you cannot. So Lord is telling here the spiritual position of his descent, avatar. So Prabhupada tells there are many avatars of the Lord. All the avatars are spiritual. They have these qualities told in Brahma Samhita Shloka, Advaita, Achyuta, Anadi, Purana Purusha, Navayavana, Durlabha. All these qualities are there in all the Vishnu Tattva avatars. And Lord Krishna, especially when he comes, he is Swayam Bhagavan. Krishnam Swayam Samabhavat Paramah Pumanyo. All the other avatars are actually Kala. Kala means expansions. Niyamena Tishnan. So they are Rama, Adi. All the avatars are actually expansions. Nana Avatar. But you are Swayam, and you descend in your original form as two-handed Lord Krishna. So Prabhupada says here an example of Vaidurya stone. Vaidurya stone, very interesting. It can change colors. I have not seen it. I have not heard about it much. But Prabhupada says here that Vaidurya stone can change colors. Similarly, the one stone showing many colors. Similarly, it's one Lord. Advaita means there is not two Lords, one Lord. But that Lord, he to exchange different rasa with his devotee, he takes different forms. Bhagavatam explains like this. So it's that one without a second. So one, he's that one Vaidurya stone only who manifests different colors. So Prabhupada explains the tattva of different appearances of Lord. So when Lord appears, he appears in his spiritual self-same body, which is not made up of this material mind, intelligence, Panchamahabhutas. But when the jivas come, they take bodies which are of matter. So every time Krishna came, devotees like Arjuna were there because Lord descends along with his devotees. So Arjuna must have been there when Krishna spoke this knowledge to Sun God. So, but he's not able to remember. So the Lord's devotees, Lord is telling here, they are not able to remember. But demons are also not able to remember and understand about Lord. Are they same? No, they are not same. Prabhupada says that Lord's devotees are having mercy of Lord, so they will soon understand the position of the Lord. But the demons, because of their inimical nature, they can never have this knowledge. They can never understand. Even though they read Shastra, they will not understand this fact. It will remain like a bottle licked by honey from outside. So it's the bottle of honey which is licked from outside. I mean, so it will remain far distant by their acceptance. So Lord has told this. Now he will tell little more about his very nature. Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishvaropi san prakritim swam adhishtaya sambhavam yatma mayaya. Please read. Please read.
Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form.
So I am Aja, the shloka you see, means unborn. I am Avyayatma, means my body never deteriorates. It's not made of matter that it deteriorates over a period of time. Or my position, I fall from it, or no, like that. No. And I am Ishwar of all the bhutas, all the jivas, but still I come periodically. I appear in this world. Sambhavami. Sambhavami. And how he appears, why he with what he appears by his internal energy. Atmamayaya. It's not that external energy is forcing, just as jivas are being forced by the Maya to take body after body. No, Lord is out of his own will, that is his internal energy. And as a expression of his mercy towards his dear children jivas, that he comes. Because when he comes, he gives them sufficient topics to discuss. In future also they can discuss. So that is a very essential mercy of the Lord. The descent of Lord is not just effective only when Lord is there, but it is effective even when the avatara has disappeared, because one can hear about the avatars, one can discuss, remember about those avatars, worship those avatars. They are eternal forms, is it not? So one gets sufficient topics to be discussed, to think about when Lord appears and performs pastimes. So Lord is telling here his qualities spiritually, at the same time seemingly contradictory nature, that is, he appears in this material world. He appears to take birth, but he comes in original transcendental form. So Prabhupada tells in the purport that Lord appears, it's like sun. Sun appears and sets, but he never, no, it's not that sun is not existing or like that when he's set. He's always there in the sky. It's our vision which makes him appear and disappear. Similarly, Lord is always present. His activities are always happening. To our vision, material vision, they become prakata, manifest sometime, and aprakata, unmanifest sometime. So we cannot call that as birth and death of avatara. That is not correct. So here it's told Sambhavami Atmamaya. So Atmamaya has two meanings. One is Lord's avatars are under internal energy, and Lord's avatars are his mercy. The avatars are the mercy of Lord, Atmamaya. Now Lord will tell, okay, after telling about the very nature of his self, that he doesn't forget, even if he he keeps coming again and again. And his nature here, that he comes in internal energy, his Aja, Avyaya, all that. Lord tells, then why he comes? Naturally, one may question, what's the purpose of his coming? Because he is not bound to come. Why will one make an attempt to come to this miserable world? What is the purpose of Lord? So that is told in the next two shlokas. Very famous shloka. Yada yada hi dharmasya glamir bhavati bharata Abhyuttanamadharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Please read.
Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice or descendant of Bharata and prominent rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself.
So yada yada, whenever and wherever, dharmasya glani, destruction, deterioration of dharma. Dharma here means actually universal principles. Prabhupada tells the very essence of human life is to follow the instructions of Lord. That is dharma. And dharma means Bhagavad Pranitam. The instructions of Lord are dharma. So when jivas don't follow that dharma, that means they are falling up, down from that dharma. Dharmasya glani. When that happens, O Bharata, and whenever there is adharmas increasing, abhyuttanam adharmasya, that time, tad atmanam, that time, srijamyaham, aham srijami. Now here, very interesting, srijami word, it gives a lot of scope for the disbelievers of God to speculate here. Oh, just see, srijami means he took a body like creator. He got a material body like us. So his descent is material. So Mayavadis may interpret like this. So our Acharyas Prabhupada has told, but that thing was already defeated earlier in the earlier shloka. Lord told he is Aja, he is Avyayatma, and he comes out of internal energy, Atma Mayaya. So why will he refute by telling he takes birth, Srijami? Here Srijami means manifest. It does not mean take birth. So Prabhupada explains that in good amount of lines in the purport. And later, Prabhupada also says, what are these dharma? What is this dharma which is told here? So dharma, actually, Prabhupada mentions principles of religion laid down in Vedas. They are the dharmas, which are actually instructions of Lord, Bhagavad Pranitam. And any discrepancy in that will make one adharmic, irreligious. So the principles of dharma are direct orders of Supreme Lord. They have clearly indicated throughout Bhagavad Gita. So every time an avatar comes, it is to do this. We can see Prabhupada gives an example of Buddha. Buddha came when there was the purpose of dharma which was not followed properly, when there was exploitation of Vedic principles, of especially yajnas. So he came and he stopped this unnecessary animal killing in the name of yajnas for selfish interests. And he told about the principle of non-violence. So every avatara has a purpose. Every avatara. So Prabhupada little below mentions, it's not that Lord appears in only one form, at only one place. He can appear anywhere, not only in India. He can send his pure devotees at any place of the universe. But they all have a purpose of establishing dharma. So that is the purpose. So how do we see other dharmas, other dharma mean to say other faiths, other paths? So Prabhupada says that just as the different level of knowledge spoken in different classrooms or standards, say example mathematics, the mathematics which is taught in the second standard and mathematics which is taught in, say, in the graduation or in the matriculation or in a later time is different, but nonetheless we call both as mathematics. So 2 plus 2 is taught and later some higher level of mathematics is taught. Both are mathematics. So a devotee sees like this, that yes, the same Lord is speaking here, the knowledge according to the circumstance, according to the audience who is present. It's the same principle, but given according to the audience. So in that sense, he sees that universal dharma. So Prabhupada told, he has some of very remarkable statements. He told Jesus is this, he's a guru. Jesus Christ is a guru, Prabhupada told. Prophet Muhammad is a guru, Prabhupada told. We are not here to change you from Christianity to Hinduism. We are trying to make you follow in better way your religion, that is Christianity. So Prabhupada was, I mean, these statements are very revolutionary, especially consider that he is in a Western soil and he's speaking like this. And for a Vaishnava who is coming from Gaudiya Vaishnavism, it was really very different, how it was perceived. It was historical in that sense. So Prabhupada spoke like this, and he could see that universal principles of Dharma spoken according to the context or situation like that. So this is the purpose of descent of Avatara. Why Lord comes, that is told in 7. And also the same thing is explained in little more detail in text number 8. I will take a question here and stop with this question. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Babuji.
Yes.
Earlier you have said that Krishna has come through his internal potency.
Yeah.
So that means before Krishna, internal potency should have existed. So their impersonal thing may be coming into picture.
Okay.
So Krishna comes from energy. That energy is a supreme. How to understand this?
Okay, let me go to little technicality. So Atma Mayaya is used in an instrumental case. How do I explain it? Like in the cases in the Sanskrit there is vibhaktis, or even in English there are different cases. Ablative case, instrumental case. So what it means is, suppose Rama is the subject, killed Ravana with an arrow. So arrow is an instrumental usage here. So the energy which is told in this shloka is used in an instrumental way. So a Lord appears in this world by the Atma Maya, internal energy. So Lord's internal energy is his Swarupa Shakti only. Actually, it is very close. External energy is far much disconnected. Marginal is either very connected or disconnected, but internal energy is very close to him. And when we say internal energy, it almost says as Swarupa only, because that is so very close to the Lord. And here internal energy is used in an instrumental case. Lord appears by his internal energy. So that is the sound tone of this words used.
Okay.
Is it helping?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Little bit technical though. Understand.
So Atma Mayaya mean actually energy is not superior. What it means here is he utilizes the energy.
Okay.
So his descent, everything he does is in internal energy. In that sense we should see it. So it's not that internal energy is superior, like that. No, Lord and his energy. Lord exists with his energies. Internal energy is actually very close. It's in the intimate circle. That's why it's called internal Antaranga Shakti. So Lord's activities happen in that Antaranga Shakti. That's the point.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Okay, yes, Mataji.
So internal energy is always with Krishna. Whenever he wants to appear, he uses that. Can we think like that?
Yeah, internal energy by its very nature reminds us of Krishna. If we see it from conditioned soul side, say deities, say the Tadiyas of the Lord, Bhagavatam, or say the pure devotees of the Lord, say Mridanga, Karta. These are naturally reminding us of the Lord. So they are internal energy, we can say. And external energy, we have to make a connection. I say, suppose I'm using a laptop here. I have to make a connection. Is it not? Oh, I use it in service of Krishna. This material body, I use it in service of. It is also energy of Krishna, but we have to make a connection. But internal energy, just associating with the internal energy, reminds us of Krishna. So in that sense, we can see association of internal energy and association of Krishna are same. Is it not? So yes, Antaranga Shakti it is. In that sense, we should see.
Thank you.
Okay. I have to admit one fact that I am lagging. We will do little covering of the remaining things by little extension of time in that next few sessions. I will discuss with Prabhuji about how we can do it. Thank you very much. We are now in the mid of 4th chapter, very important chapter. Some very key shlokas are coming, which Prabhupada spoke so many times. So we'll try to discuss that in the next session. So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yay.
Interestingly, next week is Gita Jayanti. So we are approaching the very onset, of Bhagavad Gita. We will be in the 4th chapter, Transcendental Knowledge, that time. Nice. Good. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat
Hare Krishna,
Pranam.
Prabhuji, Dandavat. Thank you so much.
Vaishnavi.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.